Growing up, I didn't realize I had already been assigned a role, not officially. No one ever said it directly, but it was there. In the way my parents spoke to me, in the way they compared me, in the way attention shifted, depending on who entered the room. My older sister, Natalie, didn't have to earn it. She was naturally confident, outgoing, the kind of person who made people feel comfortable within seconds. And my parents loved that. They celebrated it, encouraged it, built it up. And I was something else. Quieter, more observant, less expressive. The kind of child who thought before speaking, who listened more than she talked. And in our house, that wasn't seen as strength. It was seen as a flaw. I didn't react when my father called me ungrateful. I didn't interrupt when my mother started listing everything they had ever done for me, like it was a debt I had failed to repay. And I definitely didn't say anything when my sister laughed. Not awkwardly, not nervously, but confidently, like she had always believed this moment would come, like she had been waiting for it. Because that night was never about dinner. It wasn't about family. And it definitely wasn't about fixing anything. It was about control, about reminding me where I stood, or at least, where they thought I stood. And for a long time, they were right. I stayed quiet. I avoided conflict. I let them believe their version of me, because it was easier than correcting it. But that night, something was different, because I didn't come there to argue. I didn't come there to explain myself. I came there to end it. And sometimes, ending something doesn't require noise. It doesn't require anger. It doesn't even require words. Just timing. And one small moment, that changes everything. That night, I placed a single envelope on the table. And when they opened it, the room didn't just go quiet. It changed. Completely. My name is Clara Bennett. I'm 33 years old, and this happened in Denver, Colorado. Before we continue, if you enjoy stories where quiet people turn situations around without drama, make sure you're subscribed. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I read every single comment. Now let me take you back, because this didn't start at that dinner table. At first, the comparisons were small, almost harmless. Why can't you be more like Natalie? She's so confident. She knows how to present herself. And at that age, you don't question it. You absorb it. You start believing that maybe they're right. Maybe something about you is missing. And slowly, those small comments turn into identity. Not who you are, but who you think you are. What made it harder was that the expectations were never clear. If I did well in school, it was expected. If Natalie did well, it was celebrated. If I stayed quiet, I was distant. If I spoke up, I was difficult. There was no version of me that felt correct in their eyes. And over time, you stop trying to figure it out. So I learned something early. Silence was safer. It avoided conflict. It avoided disappointment. And most importantly, it avoided attention. Because attention in our house was never neutral. It was either praise or criticism. And I preferred neither. By the time I was 20, I didn't feel like I belonged there anymore. Not in an emotional way, but in a practical one. I had learned how to function independently, make decisions, solve problems, without needing validation. And that realization changed everything. I didn't leave dramatically. No fight, no argument, no emotional goodbye. I packed my things quietly, found a small apartment across the city, and started working. Full-time, then extra shifts, then freelance work at night. It wasn't easy, but it was mine. Those years were difficult. There were nights I barely slept, weeks where every dollar mattered, moments where everything felt unstable. But there was something I had never experienced before: control. Every decision was mine, every outcome, mine too. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was failing someone else's expectations. My relationship with my parents didn't collapse, it just faded. Calls became less frequent, visits shorter, conversations more surface level. We didn't argue, we didn't resolve anything either. We just stopped trying. Then one evening, my mother called. "We're having dinner this weekend. Everyone will be there. You should come." Her tone was light, casual, like nothing had ever been wrong. And for a moment, I believed it. I didn't say yes immediately. I thought about it, about what had changed, about what hadn't. And then I realized something simple. I wasn't going back for them. I was going back for closure. When I walked into the house that night, nothing looked different. Same lighting, same furniture, same carefully arranged space that always felt more like a display than a home. But the feeling was different. There was something in the air, something controlled, measured. Like this evening had a purpose beyond just dinner. My mother was standing near the center of the room, talking, smiling, hosting. And when she saw me, she paused, just for a second, then smiled wider. Too perfect, too prepared. "Clara," she said, stepping forward. She hugged me lightly, not tight, not emotional, just enough to perform the moment. My father nodded from across the room, a firm, distant acknowledgement, and Natalie barely looked up from her phone. "Hey," she said casually, like I had just walked into a place I didn't belong to anymore. I didn't rush into conversation. I didn't try to fill the silence. I've learned something over time. When a room feels staged, it usually is. So instead of reacting, I watched. The way people moved, the way conversations shifted, the way my mother kept glancing at me, like she was waiting for something. Dinner was already prepared, everything set, every seat taken, except one, mine, right across from my father, next to my mother, directly within view of everyone. That wasn't accidental. That was positioning. The first 10 minutes were normal, surface-level conversations, work, weather, small updates, the kind of talk that fills space but says nothing real. And I almost believed, maybe I had overthought everything. Maybe this really was just dinner. Then my father put his fork down, slowly, deliberately, and just like that, the energy changed. It wasn't loud, it wasn't obvious, but it was clear. This was the moment. "We need to talk about something," he said, his voice calm, controlled. "We've noticed a pattern." He paused, then looked directly at me. "You've become ungrateful." The word didn't just land, it settled. Heavy, final. My mother leaned forward slightly. "We've done so much for you," she said. "Everything you have started here. Education, support, a home." She listed them like evidence, like I was being presented with proof of something I owed. Natalie laughed, soft, confident. "You always act like you did everything on your own," she said. Her tone wasn't angry, it was certain. Like she believed it completely. Like there was no version of reality where she was wrong. I didn't respond. And this time, the silence felt different. Before, it protected them. Now, it started making them uncomfortable. Because without reaction, they couldn't control the direction. And for the first time that night, they weren't completely in control anymore. If you've ever been in a situation where people define you without really knowing your story, you already understand this moment. Tell me in the comments, Have you ever been called something you knew wasn't true? I read every single comment. Now let me show you what happened next, because this is where everything started to shift. I didn't interrupt them. Not when my father spoke. Not when my mother started listing everything. Not even when Natalie added her version, because reacting in that moment would have given them exactly what they wanted. Validation, confirmation, proof that their words still had power over me, but they didn't. Not anymore. So instead of defending myself, I did something they weren't expecting. I stayed calm. While they spoke, I watched. Not emotionally, not defensively, just carefully. The way my father leaned back, confident. The way my mother kept nodding, reinforcing every word. The way Natalie smiled like she had already won something. It wasn't just a conversation. It was a performance. And they all knew their roles. Over time, I realized something important. They weren't reacting to who I was. They were reacting to a version of me they had created years ago. The quiet one, the dependent one, the one who needed them. And in their minds, that version never changed. No matter what I built outside that house, there's always a moment, right before something shifts. A quiet pause, a small space between what is and what's about to happen. I felt that moment, right there at the table, and I knew this was it. Without rushing, I reached down beside my chair, picked up my bag. Slowly. No sudden movement. No dramatic gesture. Just a simple action. But it was enough. Because now, they were watching me. My mother paused mid-sentence. My father leaned forward slightly. Natalie stopped smiling for a second. Not confusion, not concern, just curiosity. Because this wasn't part of their plan, and anything outside their script made them pay attention. I opened my bag, took out a single envelope. Plain, unmarked. Nothing special about it, except for one thing. It was intentional. I placed it gently on the table, right in front of my father. I didn't say anything, didn't introduce it, didn't explain it. Because explanation gives control, and I wasn't giving that away. Instead, I let silence do its work. And silence can be very powerful. "What's this?" my father asked, his voice still controlled, but slightly different now, less certain. My mother looked at the envelope, then at me. Natalie leaned forward slightly, waiting. Because now, they were the ones unsure. I didn't answer. I just looked at the envelope, then back at them. A simple gesture, an unspoken message. Open it. And just like that, the control shifted completely. My father picked up the envelope. Not quickly, not casually, carefully, like he suddenly understood. This mattered. The room had gone completely quiet now. No background conversation, no movement, just attention. Focused. Waiting. He opened it slowly, pulled out the papers inside, and for the first time that night, he didn't speak immediately. His eyes moved across the page, once, then again, slower, more carefully, like he thought he had read something wrong. My mother leaned slightly toward him, trying to see. Natalie shifted in her seat. The confidence she had earlier was starting to fade, because whatever was on that paper, it wasn't expected. "What is it?" my mother asked quietly, but my father didn't answer. Not yet. He kept reading, and that silence was different now. Before, it belonged to me. Now, it belonged to them. After a few seconds, my father handed the paper to my mother. No explanation, no comment, just passed it. And that alone told me everything. Because he always spoke first, always controlled the narrative, but not this time. My mother took the paper, looked down, and just like him, she didn't react immediately. Her eyes moved slower. Her expression changed, almost invisibly. But I saw it, because I had spent my whole life watching her. Control, confidence, certainty, all of it starting to slip. "What is going on?" Natalie said, reaching forward. She took the paper, faster than the others, more impatient, more certain that whatever it was could be explained, dismissed, corrected. But as she read, her expression changed too. And this time, it was obvious. Inside that envelope was everything they thought I didn't have. Bank statements, investment summaries, property ownership documents, years of work, years of discipline, years of silence, converted into something they understood. Numbers, real, undeniable. No one spoke. Not because they didn't want to, but because they didn't know how. Because everything they had just said didn't fit anymore. The version of me they believed in didn't match what was in front of them. This isn't right," my father said. But his voice lacked certainty. It wasn't authority anymore. It was confusion. Because for the first time, he didn't have control of the narrative. I finally spoke. Calm, steady. I built it on my own. No explanation, no emotion, just truth. And that truth hit harder than anything I could have argued. The room didn't just go quiet. It shifted. Completely. The same people who had been comfortable a few minutes ago now looked unsure, careful, measured. Because the energy had changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. And for the first time that night, I wasn't the one being evaluated. They were. My mother tried to speak, but the words didn't come out the same way. We didn't know," she said. Her tone softer, less certain, and that was new. Because she had always been sure of everything, especially about me. Natalie didn't say anything. No sarcasm, no confident remarks, no corrections. She just sat there, looking at the papers. Because for the first time, she didn't have a comparison to make. There was nothing to compete with. Only something she hadn't expected. My father leaned back slowly, still holding part of the documents. His expression wasn't anger. It wasn't disappointment. It was something else. Something quieter. Recognition. Not of what I had, but of what he had misunderstood. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't defend myself. I didn't remind them of anything, because I didn't need to. "I never needed anything from you," I said calmly. "I just needed space to build my own life." That was it. No blame, no accusation, just clarity. No one interrupted. No one argued. No one corrected me. Because they couldn't. Not anymore. Every version of me they believed in had just been replaced. And they had nothing ready to replace it with. I stood up slowly, not to make a statement, not to leave dramatically, just because I was done. Done explaining, done proving, done carrying something that was never mine. And for the first time in that house, I felt completely in control. "I should go," I said. Simple, calm, final. No one stopped me. No one asked me to stay. Because the moment had already passed. And as I walked toward the door, I realized something. I wasn't leaving empty. I was leaving clear. What I left behind wasn't anger. It wasn't conflict. It was something heavier. A realization they couldn't undo. That everything they believed about me was incomplete. And that truth doesn't fade easily. Looking back now, I understand something I didn't before. I was never ungrateful. I was just independent in a way they didn't understand. And sometimes, People confuse independence with rejection, but it's not the same. Not even close, because I didn't walk away from them. I just stopped needing them, and that difference is what changed everything. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and tell me in the comments, have you ever been misunderstood until you stopped explaining yourself? I read every single comment, and there's another story waiting for you on your screen. When you're ready, I'll see you there.